Bonjour, bonjour, bienvenue. Comment allez-vous? J'espère que vous allez bien. Bienvenue. Aujourd'hui, c'est le 10e jour. J'espère que tout va bien. On avance, on avance. Donc, ça, c'est bon. Donc, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire aujourd'hui? Les verbes pronominaux. The English calls it the reflexive verbs. En français, on dit les verbes pronominaux. So, verbs, we're going to, sample verbs for this lesson are se lever, se laver, s'habiller, se promener et se reposer. OK? Bon, on commence. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Qu'est-ce que c'est les verbes pronominaux? What are pronominal verbs? What are reflexive verbs? Yeah, most times people ask this. What are they? They seem not to understand. Okay, so let's get down there to see what this type of verbs are. What can they be used for? Why do they look different from the normal verb manger, aller, dormir? Why do they look so different? All right, let's look at this. First, before I go into explaining let me explain something. So you have something called the SVO, both in French and English, which is the subject, verb, and object. So here, SVO, the subject carries out the action mentioned by the verb on the object. That's a simple sentence, full stop. But with the reflexive verbs, this is what happens. The subject carries out the action mentioned by the verb and it comes back on the subject. So this is not required. Did you get that? So where the normal thing we know in sentences is subject carries out the action on the object. But in reflexive, with the reflexive verbs, the subject carries out the action on the subject. That means we don't even need the object. All right, let's get to see. All right, so what are reflexive verbs? I just explained that, so let's go into this. So reflexive verbs in French are used to indicate that the subject of the verb is performing an action on itself. So the action is carried out, is done by the subject on the subject itself, is done by the subject on the subject. So the subject is the doer of the action and the subject is at the same time the receiver of the action. So that means we don't have an object. C'est ça, that's it. The verbs are always accompanied by reflexive pronouns which agree with the subject. All right, let's look at this. Let's look at this. So you know this subject, I, and this is a reflexive pronoun, me, which means myself. Singular, second person singular, tu, which means you. And the reflexive pronoun is te, which means yourself. Il, elle, he, she. And the reflexive pronoun is se, him, herself. Nous, we, subject, and reflexive pronoun is nous, ourselves. Okay, and vous, you, and vous, you, and reflexive pronoun yourself, or yourself, depending if it's a singular, yourself, plural, yourselves, okay? So, il, elle, which means they, and so refers to themselves. So, I carry out an action on myself, you carry out an action on yourself, he or she carries out an action on himself or herself, and we carry out an action on ourselves. You carry out an action on yourself or yourselves, and they carry out an action on themselves. So that's it. So let's look at this one. Let's say je me lave, je me lave. So here translates to I wash myself. So the action is carried out on the subject. The subject wash. I don't know how to put it. So the subject carries out the action on himself or herself. So in the reflexive pronoun here is me, shows that the action is being done by oneself. So it's carried out by the subject. I guess that's clear. Okay. So it's not the usual verbs we say, je mange du pain. Je mange. Oh, how do I write that? Je mange du pain. So when you say je mange du pain, so you carry out the action, carry the action of eating on what? Du pain. So that's it. I carry the action of eating on du pain. But when I say je me lave, the action is carried, it's back to the subject. I hope that's clear. So there is a difference. So je mange du pain is not an action carried out by the subject on the subject because you cannot eat yourself, okay? So, but here je me lave, I bath myself, I wash myself. That's it. Okay. Let's move further. Let's look at our sample verbs. Se lever. So what's the aim of this reflexive verb? They help you to talk about your daily routine. Things you do, actions you carry out on yourself. Yeah, like se lever, to get up. Yeah. Nobody does that for you. You do it for yourself. So se lever. Je me lève. Je me lève. Tu te lèves. Il se lève. Elle se lève. Nous nous lèvons. Vous vous levez. Il, elle se lève. So I could say, je me lève à 7 heures tous les jours. That's it. I get up at 7 a.m. every day. Okay? Se laver. Se laver. Je me lave. Tu te laves. Il, elle se lave. Nous nous lavons. Vous vous lavez. Il, elle se lave. Il se lave les mains avant de manger. So he washes his hands before eating. Okay, so I just have a feeling that it's not clear. The explanation isn't clear. So let's look at this other aspect. So look at this table. So you have the subject. You have the subject and you know all of the subject pronouns, right? And then you have your pronoun réfléchi. And here, look at them. So you go, je me, it means, tu te, il se, elle se, nous, vous, il se, elle se. So you can see that. So it says that when you're placing a reflexive pronoun, it has to agree with the subject. That means you cannot place a reflexive pronoun like this. You can't say je suis. You can't say tu me. If you must place a reflexive pronoun, it must go this way. Elle, nous, il, and elle. That's it. Before your verb. So the reflexive pronoun comes after. Sorry, the reflexive pronoun comes before the verb. So after the verb, after the reflexive pronoun, you can now place your verb. Je me lave. Okay, so let's continue. So here, yeah, so the verb se laver. So je, me. If the verb begins with a vowel, so you're going to use M apostrophe, D apostrophe, S apostrophe, S apostrophe. That's for verbs like s'appeler. But if the verb begins with a consonant, you're going to use me, te, se, and su. All right? So, for example, laver means to wash oneself. So then, je me lave, I wash myself. Tu te laves, you wash yourself. Il se lave, he washes himself. Elle se lave, she washes herself. So that's it to the last one. So let's look at the verb s'appeler. I'm very sure everyone knows this because we always use je m'appelle to say our names. And most times we don't even know what it is. We just think it means my name is. Actually, it doesn't mean my name is. S'appeler means to be called. Donc, je m'appelle means I am called, or I call myself. I call myself Maria. Je m'appelle Maria. I call myself Maria. That's it. Tu t'appelles Maria. You call yourself Maria. All right. So that's how it goes. So you see? Okay, so let's look at this. Let's see the difference between this. So maybe some of you may be asking, well, we have a verb called laver. So why are you saying to laver? And we have a verb called appeler. So why this appeler? All right, let's see. So we have a verb really called laver. Yes, it means to wash. This verb laver has no pronoun, so it goes this way. The action must be carried out on something. Je lave les vêtements. I'm washing my clothes. Je lave mon enfant. So you can see that S-V-O. Whereas this one doesn't have an O. It just goes S-V. There's no O. Chaque matin is not an object. That's an adverb of time. So je m'appelle. Now look at this one. Je m'appelle Mary. I call myself Mary. Be careful when you remove the M apostrophe because you feel it's inconsequential and you say j'appelle Mary. You're no longer saying I'm called Mary or I call myself Mary. You're actually saying, you're directly saying I am calling Mary. So you see the difference between the two verbs? You see the difference? So let's look at this other verb, se lever. Yeah, to lift oneself, to get oneself up. Yeah, so je me lève à 6 heures. I get myself off, maybe. I get myself off the bed, yeah. Lever. Lever means to lift. Imagine you saying, je lève à 6 heures. So the person you're speaking to will be wondering, tu lèves quoi? Oui, tu lèves quoi? Je me lève, you say, je lève à 6 heures. The person will be like, tu lèves quoi? So what did you lift? You lifted what? What did you wake? What did you lift? That's it. Okay? So that's it. So that's the difference between the reflexive verbs and the normal verbs that you have always known. So that's the difference. So be careful not to remove the reflexive pronouns thinking they are inconsequential. No, they are not. They are there for a reason, a very strong reason. They give the verb a meaning that wasn't there before with the normal verb. Okay, so they give the verb a special meaning. So don't remove them because when you remove them, you would have removed that meaning. Okay, so let's continue. All right, so I think we're missing one verb. Okay. S'habiller, yes, let's look at s'habiller, to get dressed. So like you see, they are all verbs that we use in the se lever, to get up, se laver, to wash oneself, and s'habiller, to get dressed. So these are things we do in the mornings, okay? Je m'habille. So you see here, this begins with H muet. So I have to contract it. Je m'habille. Please don't pronounce the H. The H isn't pronounced. The H is not pronounced. Je m'habille. Je m'habille. Tu t'habilles. Il s'habille. Elle s'habille. Nous nous habillons. Vous vous habillez. Il s'habille. Elle s'habille. Be. S'habille. Je m'habille. I. Not Bill. It's not Bill. It's not Bill. I think I've mentioned this before. I-L and I-double-L in French are pronounced I. Je m'habille. S'habiller. That's why you pronounce the verb s'habiller. When you come here, nous nous s'habillons, nous s'habillons. Vous vous s'habillez. Il s'habille. That's it. Okay, so promener, to take a walk. Je me promène. Tu te promènes. Il, elle se promène. Nous nous promenons. Vous vous promenez. Il, elle se promène. Okay, s'habiller, a sentence there. Nous nous s'habillons rapidement le matin. That happens like, c'est presque normal. Il se promène dans le parc chaque soir. Oui. All right, so let's look at our last verb. Our last verb is se reposer. Yeah, one more verb you would need in the morning is se réveiller. Se réveiller. So you could try to se réveiller. Se réveiller. Se réveiller. Je me réveille. Je me réveille à 7 heures tous les jours. Je me réveille. Oui, je me réveille à 7 heures tous les jours. OK. Se reposer, tu restes. Je me repose. Celui-ci, se reposer means to rest, not the verb rester. So most of you think the verb rester is to rest. The verb rester means to stay, not to rest. To rest is se reposer. OK? Je me repose, I rest. Tu te reposes. Il, elle se repose. Nous nous reposons. Vous vous reposez. Il, elle se repose. That's it. Après le travail, je me repose sur le canapé. Oui. So that's it. So with this verb, you can talk about your daily activities. You can say things you do. All right, let's look at practice that you can do, how you can practice using this verb. And you will have to try to conjugate this verb so you can get familiar with the verb. If you are not, you have to try to conjugate to get familiar with the verbs. And if you are, but you've not really used the verb, you really don't know how to use it, you could also try conjugating to get more familiar with the verb and then try to do these activities so that it could stick. Create sentences describing daily routines using reflexive verbs. Okay, so you could do it in writing, you could do it in speaking. Exemple, le matin, je me lève à 7 heures et je me lave et je m'habille. So I just use the verbs that we use in practicing, okay? Je me lève à 7 heures, puis je me lave et je m'habille. So you could try to describe your morning routine, what you do in the morning. This doesn't mean that you should put all verbs like prepare your prepare le petit déjeuner. Don't go and say so prepare le petit déjeuner. No, no, no. Not all verbs that you use in the morning are reflexive, please. So not all of them are reflexive. So please don't. Because at times I hear people say that je me prépare le petit déjeuner. No. So préparer means to prepare, to get ready. But when you use it with déjeuner, it's like I'm preparing myself the breakfast. It doesn't make sense. So keep your prepare le petit déjeuner normal. It's just a normal verb, okay? And please don't say je me mange, okay? Not all verbs are reflexive. Don't say je me mange. Je me mange would translate to the fact that you're eating yourself, okay? Don't say that. So try to describe your morning routine. Not all verbs are going to be reflexive, okay? But most of the verbs would be reflexive. And talk about what you do to relax after a long day. Actually, the verbs are reflexive for this. The verbs are. And explain how you prepare for a special event. Most of the verbs here are also reflexive. So I would like to see what you write in the comment section. And also, if you belong to the WhatsApp group, we'll be meeting today, this evening. So you can either leave it here in the comment section for correction, or we meet in the WhatsApp group to look at it closely. Okay, so that's the end of our lesson for today. I hope you had a nice time. I hope you enjoy. I hope you did not just enjoy. I hope you understood what was taught today concerning reflexive verbs, because this is one place a lot of people have issues. Yeah, they seem not to understand it. Why, how, and all of that. I hope I was able to respond to all of your questions. If I did, don't forget to give me a like. All right. Au revoir. Bye et bonne journée.